No. We never saw horses. Never saw them.
Not until the government started managing camel races.
They put them on the barbecue after.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully they remembered that portion of it.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item number 8, Commission Policy number 22, Mule Deer Policy. We'll have a first reading of a new commission policy, proposed new commission policy, and this was labeled as number 28, Mule Deer Policy. And I just handed out and put copies, more than a dozen copies, closer to 20 back there on the back table, of a slightly revised edition of what came out. Most of these suggestions, I won't say all of them, but the majority of the few changes were suggested by the council, and some of them were slightly paraphrased by myself. We went over them. There was a couple items, specifically in number 1, that needed to be modified. There was some, but mostly there was a couple wills to shall, or wills to shoulds, and similar items like that. There was a portion in item number, let me flip through it and go with one. Item number 3, that was, it was a small portion of that paragraph that was nipped out of the middle in there. And these are just proposals for a policy. A lot of this is based upon a few different documents that came out, one of which was the department's, I guess the current existing mule deer, what's it called, plan. Got it here, let me look at the title. And then also by the findings of fact that were approved by this commission a couple meetings ago. And we need to come up with something, you know, it's my opinion, it was the opinion of the committee, Mule Deer Restoration Committee, that we come up with some form of a policy, some guidelines to guide the department in dealing with problems with the mule deer population. And this we've got.
Scott, do you have a track change version of this?
Nope. And if anybody gets a chance to read through that, see if there's anything you like, dislike, want to add to it, subtract from it. And Suzanne also has a digital copy of it as well. I handed this out to the commission just right now for the record, and I gave, and you've got a copy as well. I think they've got plenty of copies back there. I just set them out back there. I think there's more copies than there are members in the audience. There should be. But the bulk of the substance is the same. course, we'll have a chance to go over it this evening at your leisure and see if there's anything need change. But if there's anything you'd, in looking over the previous version that you had an issue with, wanted to bring up, we can see if that's been addressed or something new. What you got? You got something, I can tell.
I got comments. Is this the time?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I've got a few.
Public comment.
Let's start off on purpose. What caught my eye here is historically mule deer exist in a population in excess of 200,000. I think that's factually incorrect. I think historically, over the last 100 years, that the number of mule deer has been much less, and maybe what you really meant to say was that there were a couple periods where, in time, in past history, where mule deer were in excess of 200,000.
So perhaps maybe mule deer exist in populations at time, comma, at times, insert at times.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay. Okay.
Let me see.
We'll go over these things. And actually, as soon as you get done, then I'll ask see if there was anything we had for the public on this, and the cabs can go over what they had on it.
Right under policy, it says the Board of Wildlife Commission. I think you meant to say Board of Wildlife Commissioners.
Very good.
With respect to number 1, I think I have a problem with this one in that it appears to be inconsistent with NRS 501.337, Section 3. When I read that section, it makes it pretty clear, seems pretty clear to me, that it is the director that has the authority to make personnel changes and restructure the department, and that the commission can only consent to those changes. I don't see anything in there or any other place in NRS where the commission has the authority to direct the department on how to structure the department itself. So I just don't see where we have the authority to do that.
Yeah, just for the record, even the director can make those recommendations, but it's the director of the Department of State Personnel is the only one that can make changes to the job description.
And that's why we insert in here, if necessary, in accordance with state law. And of course, this is a broad, the idea of this is a broad policy. Rather than getting into those exact specifics, we could just state in accordance with state law, and we understand there's that NRS and there's a pile others under 233B and others, 284, and I'm sure Mr. Stockton could expound for a couple hours, but rather than trying to expound upon them in accordance with state law, it does talk about being in conjunction with the commission, but anyways.
Okay, moving on to Section 3. After the first sentence, it says, they will close or severely limit seasons in areas where populations are far below historical high deer numbers unless a specific reason can be clearly identified for the declines in population. I got a problem with this because that means that we're going to be cutting back our deer seasons to try, based on a population level that only occurred 2 times in the last 100 years. And so that makes no sense to me. I mean, we should base the determination on what we do with populations based on the full array of factors that may be at issue. And I don't know if there's a backdoor to allow that, because it says unless a specific reason can be clearly identified. Well, I think there are a lot of specific reasons why things aren't as good as they were when during the high population years. But anyway, I can't see where we would severely limit seasons, trying for some mythical, high point in our history. The next one really bothers me.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment on that?
Let's give everybody a chance, and we'll give you a chance, and I want to give him a chance. I want to get access to the public comment, and we'll get you, make sure to make comments so everybody.
The next sentence I really have a problem with. Buck harvest will be reduced or eliminated in areas units where populations are below objective population goals. Now, first of all, I have listened to this department, and I have listened to the biologists and the experts make the statements with regard to buck harvest that we could have the number of bucks be as low as 3% of the population, and those bucks will take care of business. And that the only thing that we're doing with our buck harvest is with our goals, that the way the cabs and the commission, past commissions, and the department in reaching what we feel are the quality aspects of the hunt, and that we limit the buck harvest to for the goal of getting that percentage of 4 points in the harvest up as high as we possibly can, well, within reason, still allowing for a number of hunts. I don't know of any studies that
I think we struck most of that. That was one issue that came up, and
Okay, you're going to have to cut me off then as soon as if it's been struck,
Yeah.
you can cut me
I
off.
think we struck a good chunk.
I don't
there.
have time to read a document that has not been track changed.
Okay. I think we struck that section.
Okay. Has that sentence been struck? Buck harvest.
No, it's been changed to deer harvest, or mule deer harvest.
No, wait a second. Let's go back here.
The sentence has only been changed.
No
to
comments from the.
Hold on. You get a chance here in a second. Let me go over this.
Yeah.
First paragraph of 3.
That's where we're at. Okay, mule deer harvest, gotcha. Okay, that section, no, the portion below that, yes. Okay, sorry. Mule deer harvest should be reduced or eliminated in areas where populations are below objective population goals.
Yeah, and so even with
Okay.
the new language, I still have heartburn with it because what we have here is we have a natural resource, and what we're doing, we have a sustainable natural resource. That resource basically produces deer, 50% bucks, 50% does, and we all know that not all the bucks are needed to maintain the population levels, and so there's a part of the buck harvest that is really, just there for the taking. We should take that and that's what the sportsmen are here to do. I can't see there being any reason to reduce buck harvest, in those circumstances. We're directly taken away from sportsmen if we do that. Next sentence, all doe harvest will cease until sufficient scientific data to justify them should be presented. Well, I also have a problem with that. The department time and time again has indicated what the scientific reasons are for the doe harvest.
The next couple sentences were eliminated.
I guess at this point, when I started reading this, I started thinking to myself, wait a second. We're now going beyond broad policy. This almost is getting to have the flavor of a regulation. I mean, the commission has been, as have all the rest of the Nevada government been placed on hold with regard to regulations. This is getting to have the flavor of a regulation in my mind. This is going way beyond broad policy. Okay, number 4. I don't understand. I don't understand what we're doing. We don't have, neither this commission or the Department of Wildlife have much of anything to do with grazing. The authority for grazing lies with our federal agencies, lies with the BLM, U.S. Forest Service, and what is this? Just that we're going to be writing letters to the BLM and the U.S. Forest Service trying to get them to do things that we know they're not going to do? Back in the 90s, AUMs were basically suspended for ranchers, and that hasn't changed. Substantial reductions, probably approaching 50%. I think it's a pipe dream to think that the BLM is going to be going in any other direction other than maybe further down. Furthermore, anybody who, and I'm hoping that Commissioner Voller can, speak to this as well. Anybody who knows, has been involved in a ranch where the term permit renewal is occurring, either based on a transfer of the ranch or if the permit expires. Grazing permits are 10-year permits, and when they expire, you have to kind of go through the process again. And what's happening is every time that's occurring, there's a group called Western Watershed Project that is basically filing protests against all those term permit renewals. And we all know, well, we all should know, that what their purpose is to eliminate grazing from the public lands. And, they basically are attacking everything in the science and using the Endangered Species Act and all kinds of arguments. If you read one of their documents, it's the kitchen sink being thrown at the livestock industry. And when you put all this together, I just have a real major concerns that we're going to put forth a policy that is going in the complete opposite direction of everything that is out there on grazing. Not only what I've just mentioned, but everything that is out there from the range managers and the science. And then finally, I have never been able to understand. I can understand high-intensity grazing in a situation where you have control of the animals in smaller lots where you can move them around and sit them on small plots. But when you look at the standard, grazing permit and allotment, the fences out there are just drift fences to keep the cattle, within, reasonable areas. And and maybe Mr. Voller can help us understand how high-intensity grazing can work. I can see how it works better with sheep because they're with their sheep all the time and they can move them around. That makes sense to me. But most of the time, cattle ranchers just put those cows out on the range, and they may have to move them from certain areas. But I can't understand how high-intensity grazing would work on public lands in Nevada. Number 5, do we have any studies on this? Are there any studies out there? Have there been any studies on this issue of supplementation?
There was quite a bit talked about, and at the committee level there was a lot of talk about it, and that's why this is, there appeared to be some promise in it, but that's why this says should study the potential benefits, because there appeared to be some, but just because it was the appearances, it's probably well worthwhile is what the committee came up with, basically because program like that would be relatively low cost per possible benefit. But it was so area specific. It was so specific as to exactly what the minerals are in that particular area that, it would be tough to have a global policy for the entire state, but just in general.
Okay, but there's no peer-reviewed studies from the wildlife standpoint that has anything to do with supplementation that we're aware of?
It depends on what part of the world you're in. There's pros. I'll give you an example. In California, they said selenium was deficient. Added selenium, didn't do anything. So, the jury's still out. There are places where it may benefit, and we're certainly, that's not something we've closed the door on. But practicality, how do you do it, and where do you do it, and do we have the budget to be able to make that assessment?
Okay, so that's enough for me. So what that really means in my mind is that certainly shouldn't be something that's in a policy. That shouldn't be in a policy because it hasn't been proven. And so why would we put it in a policy that's going to be something that we're going to do when it hasn't been proven? Let's do it as a heritage project and do some testing and see if there's any promise to it. And then if we do find that there's promise, by all means, let's do a policy. Number 6, again, that's grazing. So I've already mentioned that. The stuff with the firewood, again, same thing. All these public lands, getting BLM to do something like that. Again, what are we doing? Writing letters to the BLM to try to get them to allow for the, commercial harvest opinion juniper. I know they do that. I know you can go in and get a permit to, get fence poles and stuff like that. We can certainly, request that the BLM do that. But it makes no sense for me for something like this to be in our policy. The Department of Wildlife, number 9, Department of Wildlife will utilize all possible methods to encourage private landowners, public land leaseholders, to develop and maintain all water sources and develop meadows. I guess I'm okay with this. Are we really going to, we have a program, what's the program we have that, the conservation program that we have, landowner program? Is that along the lines of what everybody's talking about here?
One thing that should be evident in this is a lot of these things are already being implemented, at least to some degree. And a deal like this, it's a policy, either we're supporting what's going on, we think it's a good idea, or perhaps in some places providing new direction, depending on which portion of it. And this one, I think you could say it's going on to some degree at this point, but it's a really good idea, and it's really good. And also just slightly changed a couple wording in there to should utilize all possible methods to assist and encourage private landowners, public/public land leaseholders in development and maintenance of all water sources and meadows.
Okay.
So.
Okay, number 11. I've heard this commission at least give lip service to doing predator control when the science calls for it, but this seems to basically call for predator control just if there's low populations, no science determination or anything that the predators are the reason that the population is down. This goes to the whole issue of why we do predator control. In my opinion, we are pissing away a lot of money on predators, and I haven't seen where the results are where everybody thinks that they are. I haven't seen that yet. I also challenge that what I have heard with regard to predator control that has come out of this commission is a pipe dream. To think that you can do what you want to do on a landscape scale the size of the state of Nevada is crazy. And the fact that Wildlife Services can't keep up with the projects that they've already got is evidence of that. And in fact, you'd have to find a program that gets the pilots at Fallon Naval Air Station and the pilots at Nellis Air Force Base to get involved in this to be able to do it on the scale that needs to be done to have the kind of reductions of predators that had probably occurred in the past that had any impact on wildlife. If you don't have every redneck in a pickup out trapping because the pelt prices are $150 a pelt, or you're shoveling poisons out of airplanes, I don't think you're going to get the number of predators that it's going to be such a tremendous cost. I've never seen any projections, anything at all from an economic standpoint that even shows that we could even do this.